authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
Please be seated. Is the government ready to call their next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The government calls Cassandra Ventura.
All right.
Remain standing and please raise your right hand.
Good morning, Miss Ventura.
Good morning.
Just so you know, you can drink that water that's on the stand.
Oh, thank you.
How old are you?
I'm 38 years old.
What is your occupation?
I'm a musician, an entertainer.
Ms. Gavin, could you please publish Government Exhibit 2A101 in evidence for all the parties in the courtroom? Ms. Ventura, who is depicted in Government's Exhibit 2A101?
Sean Combs.
How do you know Sean Combs?
We were in a relationship for a little over 11 years.
If I refer to Sean Combs as Sean today, will you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
You said you were in a relationship with Sean for a little over a decade. During that period, were you together consistently, or were there breaks during the relationship?
There were breaks.
During that same time, were there times where you got along well with Sean?
Yes.
Were there times where you did not?
Yes.
Were there times when you had arguments with Sean?
Yes.
Without getting into the subject matter of those arguments, can you describe what arguments with Sean were like?
If they were violent arguments, it would usually result in some sort of physical abuse, and dragging and just different things of that nature.
When you say physical abuse, can you tell me what types of things that Sean did that hurt you physically?
I mean, he would mash me in my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head if I was down.
How frequently was Sean physical with you during your relationship?
Too frequently.
Were you ever injured as a result of these incidents?
Yes.
What kind of injuries did you have as a result of Sean being physical with you?
Usually pretty similar. I would get knots in my forehead, busted lips, swollen lips, black eyes. The whites of my eyes would be red. Bruises all over my body, just depending.
Okay. Ms. Gavin, could you please pull up and publish for the courtroom Government Exhibit 10C103 at 33 seconds? Ms. Ventura, directing your attention to the screen in front of you, do you recognize who's depicted in that still image?
Yes, that's me and Sean.
Do you recognize the location recorded in this still image?
Yes, that's the Intercontinental Century City.
What were you and Sean doing at the Intercontinental Century City at the time of this image was captured?
We were having an encounter that we call a freak-off, and I was leaving there.
We're going to get back to that specific incident later on. You just mentioned the word freak-off. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Who introduced you to the term freak-off?
Sean did.
And how did you learn what a freak-off was?
Within the first year of our relationship, Sean proposed to me this idea, this sexual encounter that he called voyeurism, where he would watch me have intercourse and sexual activity with a third party, specifically another man.
And how did the term freak-off come about?
I honestly don't remember exactly how it came about.
Can you describe for the jury, when you say the term freak-off, what that entails?
It basically entails the hiring of an escort and setting up this experience so that I could perform for Sean.
And what did the performance involve at a high level?
The performance involved, I'm sorry. It just involved watching, Sean being able to watch me with the other person and actually direct us on what we were doing sexually.
And when you say the other person, who are you referring to?
The third party, the escort or dancer that would be hired.
Who was in charge of all the aspects of the freak-offs you mentioned? The hiring, the setup, etc.?
Eventually, it became a job for me, pretty much. To where I knew that if that is something that he wanted to do, I had the contacts to set it up and get a hotel room and all of that. But in the beginning, Sean set it up. He was in charge.
And after it became your job, how did you know what to do?
He would tell me.
When Sean first proposed freak-offs, what was your reaction?
Oh, I just remember like my stomach falling to my butt, like just the nervousness and the confusion in that moment. I think I was 22 at the time. I had just turned 22. I didn't have a concept of how that would be a turn on, but I also felt a sense of responsibility with him sharing something like that with me. So yeah, I was confused, nervous, but also loved him very much and wanted to make him happy. So yeah.
Did you agree to try a freak-off when Sean first proposed one?
I did.
After that, were there more freak-offs?
Yes, there were.
How, if at all, did your willingness to engage in freak-offs with Sean change over time?
I mean, pretty quickly over time. I knew that it wasn't something that I wanted to be doing, especially as regularly as it became. But again, I was just in love and wanted to make him happy.
Well, despite not wanting to do freak-offs, did you continue to engage in freak-offs with Sean?
I did.
And why did you continue to engage in freak-offs with Sean?
He would ask me. He would bring it up at random times, and I think to a point, I just didn't feel like I had much of a choice. I didn't really know what a no would be or what no could turn into.
When you say you didn't know what no could turn into, what do you mean by that?
Making him angry. Very honestly, also making him uncomfortable that I knew this thing and that I no longer wanted to do it. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. You said that you didn't know what no could turn into, and I asked you if you could explain what you meant by that phrase.
Ultimately, at that point, Sean controlled a lot of my life, whether it was my career, the way I dressed, like everything. And I just didn't feel like I had much say in it at the time, being like really super young, naive, total people pleaser. Yeah, I didn't know if he would be upset enough to be violent or if he would write me off and just not want to be with me at all.
What, if anything, were you afraid would happen if you said no to a freak-off?
Well, over time, it turned into the fact that there were actually blackmail materials to basically make me feel like if I didn't do it, that it would be hung over my head in that way, or that these things would become public. I experienced violence with him before that. The abuse started before that, so obviously in the back of my mind.
And Ms. Ventura, when you say that the blackmail materials would be hung over your head, what, if anything, were you afraid Mr. Combs, Sean, would do with the blackmail materials?
Release them. Put them out on the internet. He had many resources to do that, so...
And you mentioned that at this point, violence had started. What, if anything, were you afraid would happen physically if you refused to do a freak-off?
I mean, it was always in the back of my mind that I would somehow be hurt by him, but it's... Sean's a really polarizing person, also very charming, so it's hard to be able to decide in that moment, like, what you need when he's telling you what he wants. I just didn't know. I just didn't know what would happen.
Ms. Ventura, just to clarify one thing you said you called something blackmail materials. What were you referring to?
Referring to actual videos and photos of the sexual encounters, the escort.
To be clear, that's the freak-offs you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Okay, and who was depicted in those videos and photos with the escorts?
Me, Sean in some of the videos, yeah.
Okay, we're going to get back to this, but first, I would like to direct your attention to approximately December 2023. What, if any, items did you provide to the government?
I gave them broken laptops, iPads, phones, things that no longer worked, but I kept because I didn't know what was on them.
And what was the approximate time period that these broken electronic devices were from?
It was around the time period of being in a relationship with Sean.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Miss Ventura, I handed you what's been marked for identification as GXB. Do you recognize that I've handed you?
Yes,
Have you reviewed the contents of that drive?
I have.
At a high level, what's on that drive?
Different communications and documents pertaining to this trial.
Are those communications and documents from this electronic devices we just discussed?
Yes.
And did you also review photographs that are contained on that drive?
Yes.
Are those photographs also from the electronic devices we just discussed?
Yes.
And how do you know that the drive I just handed you is the drive that you reviewed before this trial?
Because my initials are on here.
Did you initial the drive after you reviewed it?
I did.
Your Honor, at this time, the government is going to offer some of the materials on that drive. We would offer the exhibits B101 through B112, B201 through B209, B301 through B13, B15 and B16, B315 through B20, B400A through B402, B500A through B503, and B600A through B608, and all subdivisions thereof.
Any objection?
Subject to connection, no objection.
All right, they will be admitted.
Miss Gavin, can you please pull what's up in evidence as government exhibit B105? Okay, Miss Gavin, could you please pull up and publish for the courtroom government exhibit 10C103 at 33 seconds? Miss Ventura, what's depicted in government exhibit B104?
That is Carrie Morgan, Alize Rashi, Sean, and myself, and we're on the outside patio in his room in Las Vegas on that trip.
When you say that trip, which trip to Las Vegas are you referring to?
21st birthday at the VMAs.
When you say at the VMAs, can you explain what you meant of the VMAs?
That was the event that was going on that weekend, the MTV Video Music Awards.
And what, if anything, happened between you and Sean while you were in Las Vegas for your 21st birthday?
A lot of different things happened, but he kissed me in the bathroom of his, or in the bathroom of this actual suite pretty early in the morning. We'd been up, all of us, pretty late.
What was your reaction to Sean kissing you in the bathroom?
I think I was just really confused at the time. Again, young, new artist, just didn't really know the lay of the land when it came to things like that. So in my confusion, just kind of cried and ran out.
When you say you were a new artist who did not know the lay of the land, what did you mean by that?
I just wasn't familiar with having an executive or anybody pay attention to me in that way and be forward at that point. I just didn't really understand it. I was pretty naive, I would say.
When you say that way, can you clarify what you meant by that way?
In a more than friends way, in a sexual way, romantic way.
And at this time, at your 21st birthday, what was your professional relationship with Sean again?
I was signed to his label.
And what happened after Sean kissed you in the bathroom?
I just remember running out and headed back to my hotel. I think I told Carrie about it at the time, but I didn't really share it with anyone.
Did you want Sean to kiss you at your 21st birthday?
No, not at my 21st birthday.
After your 21st birthday in Las Vegas, how, if at all, was your relationship with Sean different?
When we got back to New York, I would just visit with him. He would invite me over to his hotel. I think his apartment at the time was getting renovated, so I went to see him a handful of times.
Which hotel did you go to see Sean at?
The Trump Hotel in Columbus Circle is the one that I remember specifically.
At the same time after your 21st birthday, what, if anything, were you doing with your music career?
I was trying just to continue to go to the next album, continue recording, come up with a concept.
Were you recording another album at the time?
Yes.
What influence, if any, did Sean have on your music career at this time?
At this time, I mean, he called most of the shots, well, all of the shots. If I had a new record, I would have come to play it for him. He chose what was next for me, basically.
Before we talk about the hotel, what is the age difference, if any, between you and Sean?
17 years.
And when Sean invited you to the hotel after your 21st birthday, what was your reaction to that invitation?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
Of course. You testified earlier that after your 21st birthday, Sean invited you to hang out with him at hotels in New York. Is that right?
Yes.
How did you feel when Sean invited you to these hotels?
I mean, initially, a bit of nervousness. And then just being a young artist, like excitement, of course, like, okay, we're going to get to talk about music, or we're going to get to talk about what's next. Yeah, I think it's a lot in the time period that's kind of hazy because it was a while ago, but just nervous excitement.
At the meetings in the hotel rooms, what, if anything, did you two talk about music?
Talked about upcoming projects or the actual next album and other things. We started to develop a more comfortable relationship with each other.
And what else, if anything, happened at those meetings at the hotels?
I remember being introduced to the idea of oral sex. It wasn't something that I really understood or did at that point, and basically he taught me how.
When you say he basically taught you how, who is the he in that sentence?
Sean.
When you say you were introduced to oral sex, who introduced you?
Sean.
How did he introduce you to oral sex?
He gave me oral sex.
Did you reciprocate the oral sex?
I did not. I went home and I heard about it from him.
When you say you heard about it from him, can you tell me more about that?
He just kind of made me feel crazy for not reciprocating. At the time, just didn't understand that kind of sexual relationship. I was also still in a relationship with someone else.
When you say you didn't understand that kind of a sexual relationship, can you tell me more about what you mean by that?
I was just so young. I didn't have even the vocabulary for some of the things we talked about. Like, I was just trying to understand it, just completely sexually inexperienced at that point.
And around the same time, in addition to performing oral sex on you, were there ever any occasions where you performed oral sex on Sean?
Later on, yeah.
What was your reaction to the hotel room visits with Sean?
I think it was the nervous excitement that I say. It also just made me feel sneaky. I didn't know. I was curious, but of course ended up there and wanted to be like around him. So that was just kind of, it was like, okay, I'm here. Leaving, it was just always confusing because I didn't really know what I felt. I felt like I don't know that I knew that I was making decisions for myself or not. I feel like it was just like, here I am. I don't know how to explain that.
You said you wanted to be around him. Why did you want to be around Sean?
I wanted to be around Sean for the same reasons as like everyone else at the time. It's just this exciting, entertaining, fun guy. I had also happened to have my career in his hands. But yeah, just wanted to spend time. It felt special because not a lot of people got that kind of time with him.
Around that same time, did you also take a trip to meet Sean in Miami?
I did.
What were the circumstances of meeting Sean in Miami?
The circumstances were that I didn't have a party to host in Miami, but wanted to spend that weekend together. And so came up with a flyer that said I was hosting a party at a club in the beach area, Miami Beach area.
When you talk about hosting a party, can you explain to the jury what you meant by that?
Yeah. As an artist, to make extra money, sometimes you're asked to host events at different clubs, sometimes to perform. And that would have fallen in line with me going to a club and making money for just showing up.
And you mentioned a flyer. Who made that flyer?
I don't know exactly who made the flyer, but somebody that we knew that could create it.
Did you make the flyer?
I did not make that flyer, no.
Was the flyer advertising an actual club hosting for you?
No.
Besides yourself and Sean, who else was in Miami with you?
I was there with Carrie Morgan, and Dallas Austin later met us down there.
Who was Dallas Austin?
He's a producer, musician, and friend.
Carrie Morgan is the individual in the photograph we saw earlier?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you and Sean do together on this trip?
Together, this trip was the first time we had sexual intercourse with each other. He rented a boat. I was the first to get there. We just spent some time together, and yeah.
And you testified earlier that at some point after the hotel visits, you had given Sean oral sex. Do you remember that?
Uh-huh.
Was that prior to Miami?
I don't think so. I think it happened there. I'm pretty sure. Everything kind of happened that weekend.
Prior to having sex on that boat, what were you doing on the boat?
Just riding on the boat.
What, if any, alcohol were you drinking?
Drinking wine during the day, and then later that night started to take drugs.
What drugs did you take?
On that trip, it was ecstasy. It was a blue dolphin ecstasy pill.
Can you explain what you mean by a blue dolphin ecstasy pill?
Ecstasy used to, I don't know how it is now, but came as a pressed pill with a little symbol on it, so these had dolphins.
Who gave you the ecstasy that you took on the boat in Miami?
Sean did.
Prior to this Miami trip, had you taken ecstasy before?
No.
Had you ever taken ecstasy unintentionally before?
Yes.
What happened at that time?
I was just out of it with friends laughing, didn't know what it was until a little bit later.
And when you say you had unintentionally taken ecstasy, how did you unintentionally take it?
I took it out of someone else's Gatorade bottle, just drinking Gatorade, but it had drugs in it, but didn't know.
This was before Miami?
This was before Miami, yeah.
Prior to hanging out with Sean Moore, what, if any, drugs did you use?
I smoked marijuana and I drank wine, and yeah.
On this Miami trip, when you took ecstasy intentionally for the first time, how did it make you feel?
It's totally euphoric. It's an experience of something called ruling, where you're just really in that high. So you're super high. You're sensitive to touch. You're just sensitive to all your different senses.
Ms. Gavin, could you please pull up and publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit B107 and B108 side by side? Ms. Ventura, starting with the photograph on the left, B107, do you recognize who is depicted in that photo?
Yes, that's me and Sean on the boat in Miami.
And is this the boat you just described being on?
Yes.
And turning to the next photograph, B108, do you recognize who's depicted in that exhibit?
Yes, that's Sean and me sitting down. Same boat.
Ms. Gavin, you can take those exhibits down now. After the Miami trip, what was the status of your relationship with Sean?
I would say we were just together. We spent a lot of time with each other after that. Now, I know in hindsight, but I had become like one of his girlfriends after that trip.
When you say you knew in hindsight, what did you know in hindsight?
That Sean Combs had many girlfriends.
At the time, what did you know?
At the time, I didn't know. Can't say naive enough. I knew that we were spending a lot of time together one-on-one and really felt, like we were in a monogamous relationship for a period.
After the Miami trip, was it public that you were dating Sean?
No, not for many years after that.
Why was it not public for many years?
It was always just a discussion of me being his artist and not wanting it to look bad. But I also know it was because of his family and his children and other things, personal things for him.
What are those other personal things, if you know?
His family, yeah. Just, it was always something I understood.
Around the same time, who, if anyone, was publicly linked to Sean romantically?
Around this time, I believe it was Kim, but I think she had also just moved away around that time.
When you say Kim, are you referring to Kim Porter?
Yes.
After you started dating Sean, what changes, if any, did you eventually make in your career management?
Well, my management at the time was also managing the other producer boyfriend that I was with and just looked at this as a major conflict of interest at that point. And yeah, I basically just trusted that we were going to find new people.
And when you say you trusted that we were going to find new people, who was the we in that sentence?
Sean and I.
Just to be clear, did you break ties with your old management after you started dating Sean?
I did, yeah.
After Miami, how did your relationship with Sean evolve?
After Miami, we really just... at least for my own side of things, I really fell in love with him. I traveled with him anywhere. I was in studio. I was just like a little shadow for a little while.
You were a shadow to whom?
To Sean.
How did Sean treat you at this time?
We had fun. It was just kind of like it's my first real adult relationship. At least what I thought it was. And it was different, so different than anything as you can imagine. His lifestyle was so much different than mine.
How long did you feel this way about your relationship that you described being this, strike that? You said that Sean's lifestyle was different. Can you explain what you mean by that?
He had assistants at his beck and call. He could get anything done quickly. He had respect from everyone. He traveled quite a bit, so yeah, moving around a lot.
Ms. Gavin, could you please pull up and publish Government Exhibit B112? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize who's depicted in Government Exhibit B112?
Yeah, that's me and Sean.
What's the occasion when this photograph was taken, if you remember?
This was at a strip club in New York. I'm not sure which one, but it was on Halloween.
And what year?
I would say this is probably 2007 or 8. 7.
And Halloween 2007. Is that shortly after your Miami trip?
Yeah, yes.
If you can pull that down, Ms. Gavin, and pull up Government Exhibit B106 and B109, both in evidence side by side, please. Ms. Ventura, starting with the photograph on the left, B106. Who's depicted in B106?
That's Sean and myself.
And where are you?
We're in the back of his car, probably driving to the Hamptons or something.
Approximately what time period is this photograph from?
This is in the first year of us dating, like within that first few months.
And turning to the photograph on the right, B109 again, who is depicted in that photograph?
Sean and myself in the back of the car.
Is that the same car?
Yes.
And what's the approximate time period that this photograph was taken?
It was around the same time.
In the beginning of your relationship?
Yeah.
Ms. Ventura, how did you feel about Sean around this time in the beginning of your relationship?
I think I was just enamored by him. We were just having a good time. It was really fun at this point.
How long did you feel that way about Sean?
I don't know exactly how long. It was off and on for many years, yeah.
How, if at all, did your relationship change over time?
Over time, you just get more comfortable with somebody, obviously. But I began to just experience a different side of him, which was his abusive side and his side that was just very controlling over my life and the things that I wanted to do. But there was still love there.
Ms. Gavin, you can take these exhibits down. Ms. Ventura, you mentioned a side of Sean that wanted control over your life. Can you explain to me what you mean by that?
Being an artist at that time, everything moved really quickly for me, and I don't know. There was just no way of keeping up with what was happening, and I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. You had mentioned that one thing that changed about your relationship over time was Sean wanting to have control over your life. I just wanted to ask you what you meant when you said control over your life.
Control was everything from the way that I looked to what I was working on that day, who I was speaking to. Control was kind of like an all-around thing to a certain point.
How often did you talk to Sean in a typical day while you were dating?
All day, throughout the day.
How did you two communicate?
Texts, mostly calls.
What about phone calls?
Phone calls for sure.
And when it became a thing, did you FaceTime?
Yes.
Were there times when you did not answer Sean's messages or phone calls right away?
Yeah.
What happened when you didn't answer his messages or phone calls right away?
He's a bit of an incessant caller, or would have his staff, his assistants, security, somebody, continue to call until you answered or until he found you.
When you say incessant caller, what do you mean by that?
If there's no answer, you just keep going.
Would he do the same thing with text messages?
Yes, that's just his nature.
You mentioned that assistants and security would reach out until they found you.
Correct.
What do you mean by until they found you?
Until they heard from you and knew where you were and could tell him?
Were there times when Sean's staff located you in person?
Yes.
How, if at all, did Sean's move vary from day to day?
It varied depending on what was going on.
How did his mood vary?
I mean, it could change at the drop of a conversation, a bad conversation that I had nothing to do with. It just swung different ways.
I didn't catch that last part that you said. Could you repeat it?
I said it swung different ways quite a bit.
When it swung, could you describe the different moods that you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, agitation, kind of zoning out if he was passionate about a subject. He would just be really focused. Yeah, anger.
How, if at all, did Sean's moods impact you?
I felt like they impacted me pretty greatly. It got to a point where this is me speaking for myself, but like, you know how to handle certain people. You know when to speak to them, you know when to approach them. Like, it's the timing or what you say, how you present something just in order to make sure the person doesn't become upset with you or, change their demeanor with you.
Do you have an example of how Sean's moods impacted you?
I mean, the greatest, the most complicated and greatest examples are the abuse because, like, I also felt at certain times when I knew that it wasn't even about me and make the wrong face. And the next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the face. It was,
When you say the abuse, what abuse are you talking about?
physical abuse in the relationship. But there's also psychological. There's a lot of things going on.
You said something about making the wrong face. Can you explain what you meant by that?
If I wasn't smiling at him the way he wanted, if I just looked a certain way that he didn't like, maybe I was a brat or something, like, he would let me know I need to fix my face or watch my mouth. That was those were the things that were said in the relationship quite often. Fix your face, watch your mouth, or you have a slick mouth.
You also mentioned psychological abuse. Can you describe what you meant by psychological abuse?
That's pretty deep. I mean, psychological is just every day, not knowing who he's going to be when we woke up that day. The entire relationship. I didn't live with him, so we had time apart, and usually it was just like, I always had to be doing something. I don't know if that makes sense. I had what you would call busy work. I needed to make sure I knew what songs I was recording, what things were coming up, and then to have to list them out or I wasn't amounting to anything in my life. So it was a lot. I mean, psychological is an everyday thing, somebody constantly telling you who to be.
When you say someone constantly telling you who to be, are you referring to anyone in particular?
I'm referring to Sean.
You mentioned you always had to be doing something.
Yeah,
Who, if anyone, would check in on you about what you were doing?
he would check in. But I also worked with his engineers and all his people, so everybody was pretty much in tune with everything I was doing.
When you say his engineers and his people, are you talking about people you worked with in the studio?
Studio staff, yeah.
How often was security around Sean?
Oh, all the time, 24/7 security.
When you say trusted assistant, whose assistant are you referring to?
Sean's assistant.
What are some of the names of the security who worked for Sean during the time you two were dating?
There was D-Rock, Bonds, Uncle Paulie, Fahim, Malik, just a lot of people, but those are the main ones I can remember.
When you mentioned trusted assistant, who were some of the trusted assistants?
I mean, in the very beginning, it was David James. It just kind of changed over time. Christina Coram eventually, Neil Dominic. He had a lot of different assistants.
And we'll get back to some of those folks. When you said security kept an eye on you, what did you mean by that?
I mean, they could easily just come over and see if I was home or not. It wasn't really a secret. Yeah, does that make sense?
Was your relationship with Sean always exclusive?
No.
Were there times where you saw other men?
Yes.
Were there times where he saw other women?
Yes.
How did you feel that Sean seeing other women?
I was insanely jealous, but also super young. Didn't get it at all, but I was definitely, yeah, young and jealous.
When you say you didn't get it, what didn't you get?
I didn't get that he was him. As he would say, I'm Puff Daddy, and Puff Daddy has many women where, he likes the company of women. And yeah, I had to just really learn that over time despite what he would tell me just between us.
When you say despite what he would tell you, what do you mean?
He made me feel like we were in a monogamous relationship more often than not. It was more figuring out that I wasn't in a monogamous relationship.
How did he make you feel like you were in a monogamous relationship?
I mean, he expected that of me, so I assumed that it was the same, but he definitely would say, like, I'm not dealing with anyone else, or it's just us.
And when he would say, I'm not dealing with anyone else, was that true?
It could have been sometimes, and then other times, no.
In what city did you live when you first started dating Sean?
I lived in New York.
And after you started dating Sean, in what part of the city did you eventually move to?
I eventually lived on West End, around 60th and West End.
What were the circumstances of you moving to 60th and West End?
It was a gift actually for my birthday. And I remember on my birthday, Sean taking me and my parents up there to show them. It wasn't far from his house, like all of the other houses.
Where did Sean live in relation to the West End apartment?
He was around like 56th is Broadway at the time, so not far.
Who paid the rent for the apartment on West End?
Sean did.
Besides New York, where else and what other cities did you live while you were dating Sean?
Los Angeles. I occasionally were in Miami, but I really didn't live there. Los Angeles and New York.
Did you eventually move full-time from New York to Los Angeles?
Yeah.
And what led your move to LA?
After spending quite a bit of one-on-one time, I knew he really wanted to be closer to his kids. So that was ultimately the move he wanted to make, to be closer to them in LA. Although I wasn't ready to move out of New York, I followed him. I went.
So why did you move?
I moved because I was in love and I wanted to be near him.
And when you said Sean wanted to be closer to his kids, where did his kids live at the time?
His kids lived in California. Or some of them, yeah.
Ms. Gavin, can you please pull up for identification the court and the parties only government exhibits 2B101 and 2B102 side by side? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize what's depicted in 2B101 and 2B102?
Yes, this is one of the houses that Sean and I rented while in LA.
How do you recognize this house?
I spent a lot of time there. I had my 26th birthday there.
Are these fair and accurate photos of one of the houses Sean rented in LA?
Yes.
The government offers government exhibit 2B101 and 2B102.
No objection.
They'll be admitted.
them got released. Some of them got leaked on the internet prior to like a proper release, and some just didn't see the light of day.
Besides the songs that were released, did you release any additional albums when you dated Sean?
No, I put out a mixtape.
What's a mixtape?
It was a free album, like for fans that had been waiting for so long for music.
Approximately what year did you put out that mixtape?
I believe it was 2011 or 12. I'm not 100% sure.
How many albums on your record deal were not released?
9.
And what, if any, compensation did you receive if albums are not released?
You don't. You barely receive it when they are released.
What, if any, impact did not releasing albums have on you financially?
I mean, it was not released. Can you repeat again? I'm sorry.
Sure. What, if any, impact did not releasing albums have on you financially?
I mean, financially, I didn't make anything off them. But I think it was just more of a, you're not releasing music. You're not doing your job. So the career was kind of stifled.
Why did you not release another album during this time?
You're asking me?
Well, put another way. What were you doing instead of when you working on your music? What were you doing?
When I wasn't working on my music, I was recovering from partying. That took a big chunk out of my life. The freak-offs became a job where there was no space to do anything else but to recover and just try to feel normal again.
When you say partying, what do you mean by partying?
Staying up for days on end, taking drugs and other different substances, drinking, having sex with a stranger over days.
Does partying include what you described earlier as freak-offs?
Yeah.
Before we move on, who ultimately decided whether you could release another album?
Sean did.
How much time out of your week did freak-offs take?
It would depend on how long they were. They ranged anywhere from 36, 48 to 72 hours. I feel like the longest one ever was 4 days, maybe even more, like on and off with breaks. So it was a significant part of the week.
And you also testified just a moment ago about recovering. What, if anything, were you recovering from after a freak-off?
Recovering from the drugs, dehydration, just staying awake all that time.
Miss Johnson, when you come to a good landing place, we can take our mid-afternoon break.
Your Honor, I think this is a good landing place if the court is amenable.
Thank you. Members of the jury, it's 12:20 right now. I have been informed that your lunch is here, so let's come back at 1 p.m.
All rise for the jury.
Mr. Courtroom Deputy, do we have our jury ready?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe they are ready.
Okay, all rise.
Turning to a different topic now. When you first started dating Sean, what, if any, comments would he make about your physical appearance?
Oh, well, anything from I look too Mexican with my hair like that to I needed to have my nails done a certain way. I mean, he would clown my chip nail polish and dirty sneakers. That was like a thing. But appearance was very important to him, my appearance.
How soon after you started dating Sean did he start making comments like you just described?
It was pretty immediate.
What, if anything, did Sean say about how he wanted you to dress?
It varied depending on what was going on. Some days he would want me to be really sexy and be his woman. And then other days, I could be on my tomboy looks and stuff like that. But he was just very involved in it, yeah.
You mentioned your nails earlier?
Mm-hmm.
How did Sean say he wanted your nails to look?
He preferred them to be white from the beginning of our relationship. They just always had to be done for sure, but specifically during the freak-offs, like white or French tip.
And you also mentioned how your hair was parted. How did Sean want your hair to look?
Hair? Specifically when it varied.
What were some of the things he said to you about your hair?
Well, the biggest change was that I shaved my head around 2009 after talking about it for quite some time. But everything. The way it was styled that day, to the color, everything.
What else, if anything, did Sean say he wanted you to do with your physical appearance?
I mean, we had discussions about breast implants. We had tons of conversations about my body. And at that time, now I'm 38 years old and a woman. I didn't have much body to really talk about, and I was still developing. So there may be comments about working out or just keeping my shape a certain way when there wasn't much there to begin with.
Approximately how much time did you spend on your appearance weekly while you dated Sean?
All the time. If I wasn't doing my nails, I was getting a tan. If I wasn't getting a tan, I was doing some else. And more often than not, the physical prep was for the freak-offs. Also to be, next to him and be his girlfriend. But yeah, I had to look a certain way during the freak-offs.
Okay, we'll get back to that. How frequently did Sean comment on your appearance?
Daily.
And how common was it for Sean to make specific demands about how you looked?
It was very common.
How would you feel about the comments that Sean made about your appearance?
That also varied. I mean, he kind of critiqued a lot of people around me, other artists as well, so it wasn't a shocker. But after a while, that wears down on you. When your confidence and your self-worth, definitely my self-worth took a hit for the entirety of the relationship. Just trying to establish who I was and who I wanted to be and who I was allowed to be.
Turning to a slightly different topic, you testified earlier that Sean paid rent for you at several residences. What else, if anything, did he pay for?
He paid for cars, clothing, things like that, trips we'd take together.
Did he ever give you money to spend?
He did, yeah.
When, if ever, did he take possessions away from you?
Oh, all the time. But that was kind of if you're not doing what I'm asking of you, or if you're out of line in any way, I'll get my car taken away. I got kicked out of my house, my apartment. I would have jewelry taken away. It was very random, depending on how he felt.
Besides, you mentioned your car, you mentioned jewelry, you mentioned your house.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else he would take away?
My self-confidence, just physical things. But at that point, to me, the physical things didn't really matter. I really just wanted his approval.
Who would typically take these items?
I mean, staff, I would assume.
I don't want you to assume, just...
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I shouldn't. If I wasn't there, it would have had to be a staff member or security, somebody that had access.
Objection to the speculation.
Sustained. The jury should disregard the witness's last answer.
Ms. Ventura, let me ask you some more specific questions. You mentioned the laptops were taken?
Mm-hmm.
What else, what, if any, other electronics were taken from you?
My phone.
Who took laptops or your phone from you?
They would be taken by Sean's direction. Somebody would come and take them. I don't.
Objection.
Same objection?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson, can you lay some foundation?
Sure. Ms. Ventura, did Sean ever take any electronics from you personally?
Yes.
Did anyone else ever take any electronics from you personally besides Sean?
Yes.
Who were those people?
Security.
Who from security?
Specifically?
Yes.
I know that D-Rock was the person that used to take things by direction.
Objection.
It's overruled.
How long, strike up? Would you get these items back when they were taken?
Yeah.
How long would they typically be gone for?
It depended on how long I was being punished for, I guess.
How were they returned to you?
Sean would give them back to me, as I would go to his house, and he would give them back to me.
We've talked about a few employees so far. How frequently were you in contact with Sean's employees during your relationship?
Regularly, daily.
Ms. Gavin, can you please pull up Government Exhibit 2A301 and 2A305 for identification for the parties and the court only? Ms. Ventura, starting with a photograph on the left, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
Who is that?
Christina Coram.
And turning to the photograph on the right, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
Who is that?
Tony Fletcher.
How do you recognize these individuals?
I was around them for several years while I dated Sean.
Who did they work for?
They worked for Sean.
Are these true and accurate photos of Christina Coram and Tony Fletcher?
Yes.
How frequently were you in Sean's residences when you dated him?
All the time.
Which, if any, of Sean's homes had safes?
They all did.
How do you know that?
Because I saw them.
And who else, to your knowledge, had access to the safe besides you?
Security. Sometimes, again, a trusted assistant.
When you say security, would that cover all the individuals whose photos we just looked at?
Yes.
How frequently did you access safes in Sean's residences?
Not super frequently, but I had access to them occasionally.
For what reason would you have access to the safes?
If Sean needed me to get money out or somebody asked me to get something out of it.
On those occasions, what, if anything, did you observe inside the safes?
I mean, there was always cash, jewelry, sometimes like tapes and SD cards from cameras, guns. Yeah, it depends on which safe.
Okay, you mentioned tapes from cameras. Are you referring to videotapes?
Yes, videotapes.
And you mentioned guns. Which residences did you see guns inside the safes?
I saw in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, also Alpine, New Jersey.
Can you describe the size of the guns you saw inside the safes in those 4 residences?
I only ever saw handguns.
When, if ever, have you seen guns outside of Sean's safes?
A few times.
Who had the guns when you saw them outside Sean's safes?
They were just laid out by security. They were just on the table.
Do you recall an incident involving Sean and Suge Knight?
Yes.
Were Sean and Suge Knight friends or rivals?
Rivals.
Can you describe what happened?
Sean and I were having a freak off at one of his homes in LA. And I just remember we were kind of like just chilling at this point. And D-Rock came in and he said that Suge was down at Mel's Diner, which was just right down the hill. And they quickly packed up and drove down there.
What was your reaction?
I was crying. I was screaming like, please don't do anything stupid. I just was really nervous for them. I didn't know what it meant, what they were going to do.
Did they return?
They did.
Have you ever handled Sean's guns?
Handled? I've been handed, yeah, but scared.
Who handed a gun to you?
I don't know specifically who, but it was some security in the car.
Approximately when did this happen?
This happened later on in our relationship. We were going to a club hosting in downtown LA.
And what do you recall about that night?
I remember we took mushrooms and I was really like high. And I was handed the gun to just hold in my bag. But I was just freaking out the whole time that I was going to go off. I hadn't used or learned to operate a gun at that point. So
what did you do after the gun was in your bag?
at what point?
You mentioned that the gun that you were handed a gun in your bag?
Mm-hmm.
How long was it in your bag?
It was in my bag for the duration of the club visit. So like about an hour and a half.
And how did you feel while the gun was in your bag?
Just terrified. I didn't want anybody to touch me, come near me. I just stayed like sitting back.
You testified that who else was present when the gun was put in your bag?
There was a driver and security. I just don't know exactly who.
Was Sean present?
He was.
What, if anything, strike that. After you left the club, what did you do with the gun?
As soon as we got in the car, I gave it to whoever the security was, just didn't want it.
Why did you do that?
I had no idea why I had it in the first place, and I just wanted to not be holding a loaded gun if it was.
And aside from the time you just described when the gun was in your bag at the club, do you recall handling Sean's guns at any other times?
I recall handling...
Objection to Sean's guns.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
All right.
Aside from the time a gun was in your purse at the club, do you recall handling guns at any other times?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
It's a vague memory. Just, they came out here and there. The guns were taken out here and there. So just like I always felt like it was just a little bit of a scare tactic. I didn't really know for what purpose.
Where were the guns taken out from?
From the safe.
Where were the safes?
In the closet in his homes.
And whose homes were those?
Sean's.
And circling back to the Suge Knight incident, you described Sean and D-Rock packing up?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by packing up?
I mean, it was like, I wasn't even there. They just put on a bunch of black clothes, covered up their heads, went in the safe, grabbed guns, and next thing I knew, they were in the SUV, just...
Objection to foundation and knowledge.
Miss Johnson, can you lay some foundation on knowledge?
Sure. After you saw them pack up, what did you see them do?
I saw them get dressed and leave the house.
And you mentioned they returned, is that correct?
Yes.
Approximately how long between when they left did they return?
It really wasn't that long. I couldn't imagine. It was probably definitely less than an hour. 30 minutes, 30, 45 tops.
I want to turn to a different topic now.
Okay.
You testified early on that Sean mentioned voyeurism to you. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
How did Sean describe voyeurism to you?
He described voyeurism as a fantasy that he had where he would want to see me with another male and having sexual interaction, talking. Yeah.
Okay.
He would watch.
What, if anything, did Sean say to you about swinging?
Swinging was brought up separately, and it was a lifestyle that he taught me about couples that switch partners. And, yeah, I didn't really have too much knowledge of it.
And you testified earlier that you eventually started having freak-offs with Sean. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
How did freak-offs that you did compare to how Sean described voyeurism to you?
Can you rephrase that?
Sure, of course. Let's talk about the freak-offs first. I think that would be easier. How soon into the relationship did Sean mention voyeurism to you?
It was within the first, 6 months to a year. It was very early.
And what, if anything, did Sean say about the identity of the other person who would be involved in the sex acts?
He said we wouldn't know them, that it would be more likely be a stranger, an escort, or a dancer.
Earlier, you testified that Sean physically hurt you in your relationship. Do you recall that testimony?
Yeah.
Relative to when Sean first started physically hurting you, did the conversation about voyeurism happen?
Relatively close together, I would say.
Which one happened first?
There was abuse first, and then the conversation after.
To be clear, the conversation about voyeurism?
Conversation about voyeurism.
What was your reaction when Sean told you about voyeurism?
I was shocked. I wasn't expecting that. I just felt really like at a loss. I didn't know how to react. I didn't want to upset him if I said that it scared me or if I said anything outside of, okay, let's try it. Because I was always just down for the things that he wanted to do. I was really nervous. Really, really nervous.
Approximately how old were you when Sean first proposed freak-offs to you?
I think I just turned 22.
And how long after Sean mentioned his interest in seeing you have sex with another man was the first freak-off?
Within the first 2 to 3 months of him telling me about it.
Why did you agree to try a freak-off?
That's a great question. I wanted to make him happy. I was in a really significantly mature relationship that I don't think I was prepared for now when I look at it. But yeah, I loved him. I didn't want him to think that I thought anything bad of him for it. I just wanted to make him happy.
Where was the first freak-off?
It was at one of the homes that he was renting in Los Angeles.
And where inside the home?
In his bedroom.
Ms. Gavin, can you pull up for identification only Government Exhibit 2A627 for the court and the parties? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize who is depicted in Government Exhibit 2A627?
Yes.
Who is that?
That is the first escort that we ever had an encounter with.
Okay, when you say encounter, do you mean a freak-off?
A freak-off, yeah.
Okay. Is this a fair and accurate photograph of the escort?
Yes.
The government offers Government Exhibit 2A627.
No objection.
It will be admitted.
Can you please publish that for the jury, Ms. Gavin? Ms. Ventura, do you know the name of the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 2A627?
I don't remember.
If I refer to him as the first escort, will you know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
What did you understand his occupation to be?
I understood him to be a dancer, a stripper in Vegas, I think.
At this first freak-off, are you aware if the first escort was paid?
Yeah, he was paid.
What was he paid to do?
He was paid to entertain, to dance, and to have intercourse with me.
Who arranged the first escort to be present at the first freak-off?
Sean did.
What, if any, drugs did you take at the first freak-off?
We took ecstasy and drank alcohol.
And earlier you testified that ecstasy is a pressed pill, is that right?
Yes.
Was there any particular kind of ecstasy you took at the first freak-off?
Those were the blue dolphins that I spoke about earlier.
The same pills from Miami?
Yeah.
At what point in the freak-off did you first take the ecstasy?
Before anything started.
Who provided the ecstasy to you?
Sean.
What did you wear at the first freak-off?
Specifically, I don't know exactly, but it was definitely an outfit from a sex store, Hustler, or something with some really high platform shoes, dancing shoes.
What, if anything, did you do to disguise your appearance?
On the first meeting, Sean told me that we would wear masks, so I wore a masquerade mask, and
You described the really tall platform heels. Who, if anyone, told you to wear those heels?
Sean did.
Can you please describe what happened at the first freak-off?
After we took the drugs, he had a conversation. Sean had a conversation with the dancer. And then shortly after, he came down to the room and performed and stood in the doorway and danced for a little while I just watched and while Sean watched us.
What happened next?
It was just a gradual, I should say every freak-off was like directed by Sean. Like he knew specifically where he wanted everyone to be, the lighting and such. So over that first session, we just kind of like ended up getting closer and closer and talking to each other, and then eventually had to put oil on each other. Yeah.
You use the word session. What do you mean by session?
A session in a freak-off would be like one full time, with the escort until basically they finished. They ejaculated.
Would a session include all of the sex acts that led up to ejaculation?
Yeah, it would be pretty standard, yeah.
Do you recall how many sessions you had with the first escort at the first freak-off?
I believe we had at least 2.
And you testified earlier that the first escort was paid. How were you aware that he was paid?
I knew because Sean told me.
What, if anything, did Sean say to you about paying the escort?
That he had to go pay him, and he went and paid him.
Approximately how much, if you know, was the escort paid?
I don't know specifically, I just know that escorts were paid in the thousands.
After this first freak-off, how did you feel?
Well, I was high, so there wasn't too much feeling. I think it was a mixture of dirty and confusion with like, okay, he's really happy with me, and I did something right, so just really confusing. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. I didn't know if we were going to be doing it more frequently because I was willing to. I didn't know. So,
what, if anything, did you tell Sean about how you felt about the first freak-off?
I honestly don't remember.
Did there come a time when Sean proposed another freak-off?
Yes.
How soon after?
It was pretty soon after, within weeks.
How would you respond?
It was the same nervousness feeling, like, what am I going to do? I can't say no, like I've already done it. And ultimately I said yes.
Why did you feel you couldn't say no?
Just didn't want to make him upset. I didn't want to make him upset. I didn't want to make him angry and regret having told me about his experience that was so personal. His trust meant a lot to me at that point.
What concerns, if any, did you have about Sean becoming upset with you?
There were concerns.
Objection leading.
Grounds? Did you say leading?
Yes.
That's overruled.
Ms. Ventura, do you want me to re-ask the question?
Please.
You testify that you were concerned that Sean might be upset with you?
Yeah.
What concerns, if any, did you have if Sean was upset with you?
His anger, really. his mood changed, like what that was going to do to the rest of the day, and just how he felt about me and our relationship. So it could be different things.
How frequently did you have freak-offs with Sean after they started?
After they started, they became almost weekly, I would say.
And how, if at all, did that frequency change over time?
It became more, depending on if we were spending time with each other, it would become less, but it was weekly for a consistent amount of years.
And approximately what year was the last freak-off?
The final freak-off? 2017, 2018.
And you testified earlier that the approximate duration of a freak-off was, I think, like 2 to 3 days. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
How long were you awake during the freak-offs?
The whole time.
Did you get any sleep?
No.
Did you want any sleep?
Yes.
How did you stay awake the whole time?
The drugs honestly helped.
What kind of drugs kept you awake?
Well, ecstasy and Molly for sure. We started to do other drugs like cocaine later on.
Who gave the ecstasy?
Sean.
Who gave the Molly?
Sean.
Who gave you the cocaine?
Sean.
You testified earlier that the longest freak-off was 4 days. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Who decided when a freak-off was over?
I mean, ultimately it would be Sean. Discuss it and say this is the last one, and then hopefully that would be the last one.
And when you say the last one, are you referring to a session?
To a session, yes.
Between when the freak-offs started and when they ended in approximately 2017 or 2018, do you recall every freak-off you participated in?
No, that would be impossible.
What are some of the reasons that would be impossible?
The frequency, the drug use, it was crazy times.
In that same time period, did you want to engage in every freak-off that you participated in?
No.
Why is that?
I just felt like it was all I was good for to him. I just felt pretty horrible about myself. I felt disgusting. I was humiliated. I didn't have those words to put together at the time, how horrible I really felt. And I couldn't talk to anybody about it. So.
You testified a few moments ago that you did freak-offs because you did not want to make Sean angry.
Yeah.
During your relationship, what did Sean do when he was angry?
He would be violent with me. His look would just change over. He would just become a different person and just didn't know what was going to happen.
When you say his look would change over, what do you mean by that?
The best way for me to describe it is his eyes would go black. It's the version of him that I was in love with was no longer there.
Were there any parts of freak-offs that you enjoyed?
The time spent with him.
And what about the time spent with him did you enjoy?
At the time, I'm sorry. Just the one-on-one time I would get, because there were always so many people around, and I didn't feel very close to him. So, as sad as it was, I thought that, it was the only time I could get.
And when you said the only time you could get, are you referring to the freak-offs?
Yeah, yes.
And specifically, are you referring to the one-on-one time with Sean?
Yes.
Okay. What, if any, discussions did you have with Sean about not wanting to participate in freak-offs?
I definitely brought it up, but gently, because I didn't want to upset him or make him angry with me for even sharing it, but I just treaded lightly when I would bring it up. Sometimes I would email him about it, I didn't want to. I just didn't want anything bad to happen.
When you say you didn't want anything bad to happen, what did you mean by bad?
I mean anything bad could be him being violent, but also just him saying, okay, well, I'll find somebody else to do it with. When you really care about somebody and you're in love with them, you don't want to disappoint them. So.
When you would talk to Sean about how you were feeling, how much of your concerns were you able to express to him?
Objection leading.
Maybe you can rephrase.
Sure. Ms. Ventura, you said earlier that you would talk to Sean gently about how you were feeling. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Why would you talk to him gently?
I just never wanted him to feel like I judged him for it. But I wanted him to know that, this made me feel doing this made me feel horrible. It made me feel worthless, that like I didn't have anything else to offer him.
How would he respond when you would say things to him like this?
He was pretty dismissive. I find that I expressed myself quite a bit, and it just kind of went like he didn't really care, like it was unheard.
Objection.
Grounds?
Speculating about whether or not he really cared.
That's overruled.
Ms. Ventura, you said Sean was dismissive.
Yes.
When you expressed these concerns, what did he do?
I'm sorry?
It's okay. You testified that Sean was dismissive. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What would he say to you when you expressed concerns?
He would call me predictable. He would be like, I know you don't want to do freak offs anymore. I already know what you're thinking. At that point, I would try to backpedal and say, no, I was predictable.
How frequently would this happen?
Frequently enough, yeah. I said it more than once, more than a handful of times.
Ms. Ventura, Ms. Gavin, can you please pull up for identification for the parties and the court-only government exhibits 3A107? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize what this document is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's an email between me and Sean.
How do you recognize it?
Our names.
And is this a true and accurate communication between you and Sean?
Yes.
The government would offer Government Exhibit 3A117 at this time pursuant to the stipulation in Government Exhibit 1302, Paragraph 1.
No objection.
All right, it will be admitted.
Ms. Gavin, could you please publish to the jury, if it's possible, to put page 1 and page 2 side by side? Ms. Ventura, I'm going to direct you to the very bottom communication on page 2. Do you see where that is?
Yes.
Okay, who is that communication from?
At the very bottom is from me.
Okay, the name says BG New Pin.
Yeah, baby girl was the name I was called.
Is baby girl a name Sean called you?
Yes.
Who was this communication to?
This was to Pop Pop.
Who is Pop Pop?
Sean.
Why did you call Sean Pop Pop?
There was a period early on in our relationship where he wanted me to have a nickname for him, but I didn't want to call him anything that anyone else had called him. So he asked me what I called my grandfather, and I said Pop Pop.
How did you feel about calling Sean the same name you called your grandfather?
I thought it was weird at the time, and now I just feel like it was disrespectful.
What's the date of the first message?
April 19th, 2010.
Okay, one more question about nicknames for you. Besides baby girl, are there any other nicknames that Sean had for you?
He called me Cece.
What does CC stand for?
Cassie Combs.
In this first message, what is the subject line?
It says, I really need to...
Who sent the email?
I did.
How did Sean respond to your message in the next communication?
He says, so who are you going to... Want to call someone?
What is your understanding of what want to call someone is referencing?
Want to call someone is like, want to call an escort for a freak off?
And when you sent the communication, I really need to... Why did you send that?
Because I wanted to be with him, and that was my way of saying it.
And when you said you wanted to be with him, are you referring to Sean?
Sean specifically, yes.
During your relationship with Sean, who did you want to have sex with?
I wanted to have sex with him.
Did you want to have sex with the escorts?
No.
So turning now, Ms. Gavin, we can take that down. If you could blow up the bottom communications on page 1. So directing your attention to the first communication, your response. What do you respond to Sean saying, want to call someone?
I say, I want to you. Are you crazy?
Why do you respond that way?
Because that's exactly how I felt, and I didn't want to call anyone.
So Ms. Gavin, if you could take that down. So starting from that point, I'm going to read Sean's messages, and you'll read your messages through to the end.
Okay. So, just joking. I want to talk to you about something tomorrow. Going to sleep. Love you. Is it going to stress me out? What is it about? Freak off. It can wait. It's not a big deal. Now you don't want to do it anymore? Oh, I already know. You're so predictable. Really? Okay. Since that's definitely what it was, we'll leave it at that then, since I'm so predictable. Have a good night. Whatever, baby. I'm not going to play no games with you, and you ain't going to keep shutting me down. I'm not shutting you down, I never do. If anything, it's always the other way around. I wasn't going to say I didn't want to do it anymore. What were you going to say?
So directing your attention to Sean's message in about the middle of the page, saying, now you don't want to do anymore. What do you understand him to be referring to in that message?
That he knew I didn't want to do the freak-offs anymore.
And how did you react after Sean sent this message where he said, now you don't want to do anymore? I already know, you're so predictable.
I mean, I tried to backpedal. I said, yeah, okay, since that definitely is what it was, just kind of playing it off or trying to.
Why would you backpedal in situations like this?
Because I didn't want to make him angry. Like,
directing your attention to, I'm sorry, Ms. Gavin, can you take that down? The top, if you can blow up the top, please, the first two. Directing your attention to the end of your message here where you said, I wasn't going to say I didn't want to do it anymore. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Accurately how I felt?
Yes.
No.
Why did you say that if it wasn't how you felt?
Just didn't. I really didn't want to make him think I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want him to be upset or not trust me.
You said you didn't want him to be upset. During your relationship, what did Sean do when he was upset?
He would be a scary person. He could be violent. Or also just somehow figure out how to make it happen anyway, no matter how uncomfortable it made me.
When you say make it happen anyway, what does that refer to?
The freak-off.
Okay. Ms. Gavin, can you take down this exhibit? Ms. Ventura, turning back to the freak-offs, in the beginning, was Sean open at the freak-offs about his true identity?
He was not.
How, if at all, did he disguise his identity?
Well, he started with the masquerade masks. Sometimes he would wear a hat or something covering his face.
Were you open about your true identity?
I was not either.
And what, if anything, did you do to hide your identity?
The same thing as far as the mask. I would wear wigs.
Who asked you to wear a wig?
Sean.
Who asked you to wear a mask?
Sean.
Over the period of time that you did freak-offs with Sean, did you always wear wigs and masks?
No, not always.
How did that change?
Eventually, I don't think it was too difficult to figure out who he was because he would talk. But eventually, just be comfortable enough with the escort or person that was there to just remove the coverings.
Beside the wig and mask, what other clothes would you wear for freak-offs?
Always super see-through netting outfit. It varied. Just sexy outfit from a sex store.
What are some of the stores you would buy outfits at?
In LA, there's a store called Pleasure Chest, Hustler on Sunset. Here in the city, there's just little shops everywhere.
In addition to the outfit you described, did you wear shoes?
I did every time, yeah.
What kind of shoes?
The Lucite stripper dance shoes, yeah.
What kind of heels do those shoes have?
Extremely high heels.
Who decided what you would wear to freak-offs?
I would purchase outfits and show Sean and see what he liked best.
Would you wear the outfit that Sean selected?
Yep.
And with respect to the high heels you talked about, for how long would you wear those high heels during the freak-off?
I would wear them throughout. If there was a break, I might take them off, but yeah, throughout.
What conversations, if any, did you have with Sean about preparing your physical appearance for a freak-off?
He would just ask me, did you get a wax? Are your nails done? Did you have a tan? Just basic list.
How long did it take to prepare your physical appearance for a freak-off?
It could take all of that daytime.
Would that be taken up by things you mentioned, like getting your nails done, getting a wax, getting a tan?
Getting supplies, everything, yeah.
What, if any, body piercings did you have while you were dating Sean?
I had my nipples pierced, and prior to, way back, I had my belly button pierced and a hood piercing.
Okay, so starting with the nipple piercing, when did you get the nipple piercing?
I initially got one with a friend and took it out. This was early on in LA. I just took it out. And then he made a suggestion that I do both, so the next week I went and did both, yeah.
When you say he made a suggestion that you do both, who is he?
Sean.
And what does both refer to?
Both nipples.
Did you want to pierce both nipples?
At the time, I think I did. I took the initial one out because of the pain, but I thought it looked cool.
And you mentioned a hood piercing?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
It's a piercing that like basically sits on your clitoris.
And when did you get that piercing?
I got that shortly after the nipple piercings.
Why did you get that piercing?
Sean's suggestion. He actually came with me, yeah?
Earlier, you testified that the first freak-off was at Sean's house. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Were there other freak-offs at his house?
Yes, there were others.
Which of his homes did you have freak-offs in?
I would say mostly all of them, except for Mapleton.
Does that include his home in Miami?
Yes.
Does that include his apartment in New York City?
Yes.
And besides his home, what, if any, other homes did you have freak-offs at?
In my apartments, my homes.
Which of your homes did you have freak-offs at?
I think all of them, except for the Studio City house.
So does that include the West End address in New York?
Yes.
Does that include 818 Doheny?
Yes.
Does that include 875 Comstock?
Yes.
And besides homes and apartments, at what other locations did freak-offs occur?
Hotels mostly.
And in what cities did you have freak-offs with Sean and a male escort?
New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Ibiza, Spain, Turks and Caicos, random places.
What about Las Vegas?
Vegas as well.
So going through, you mentioned New York City. What are some of the hotels that you had freak-offs at in New York?
New York would be the London, Trump Hotel, Gramercy. Honestly, you name it, we probably did it there.
What about the Intercontinental Hotel?
44th Street, yeah.
In LA, what are some of the hotels you had freak-offs?
L'Hermitage was frequent, Beverly Hills Hotel, the London there as well. Shutters on the Beach, there's, where else? Other places.
What about the Intercontinental in LA?
Century City, thank you, yeah.
And in Miami, what are some of the hotels where you had freak-offs?
Mandarin Oriental, Satai, Fontainebleau, the One Hotel, yeah.
What types of rooms were freak-offs usually held in?
They were usually held in like a room that had a living room that you could close the door, or like an extra room with an additional bathroom, so like a small suite, junior suite.
Who, if you know, booked the hotel rooms?
It varied. Sometimes it was someone like Tony Fletcher on staff. Occasionally I would book hotel rooms. Yeah.
Who, if you know, paid for the hotel rooms?
I believe Sean paid for the hotel rooms.
What are some of the names that were used on hotel reservations?
Jackie Starr was the name that I used. Frank Black, Frank White, there were all types of names.
Turning to Jackie Starr, why did you use the name Jackie Starr?
That was a name that, I don't know who came up with it, if it was him or me. That I used to actually book dancers, so I would use that name instead of my own name, and then just started using it as a hotel room name.
And you also mentioned Frank White and Frank Black?
Mm-hmm.
Whose aliases were Frank White or Frank Black?
They were Sean's.
What, if any, supplies were needed for freak-offs?
Main supplies were baby oil, Astroglide, lubricants, and condoms.
Who typically brought the supplies to freak-offs?
More often than not, it was staff. The room was usually stocked by the time we got there. If not, if it were a last-minute situation and I set it up, I would get the things, or sometimes Sean would bring them.
When you say staff, whose staff are you referring to?
Sean's staff.
Which positions on Sean's staff would be tasked with stocking the hotel rooms?
Assistant, security.
You mentioned baby oil. What brand of baby oil was used?
Johnson's baby oil.
How was the baby oil used during the freak-off?
It was just as important as everything else as being there. We used it quite a bit.
Where was it? Where was the baby oil placed?
We poured it all over our bodies. Had to be glistening, yeah?
What participants in the freak-off, if any, used the baby oil?
Everyone.
Would that include you?
Yes.
Does that include the escort?
Yes.
Did that include Sean?
Yes.
What temperature was the baby oil when it was poured on your body?
It was always heated. And keep the cap on, put it in the sink with hot water, and let it warm up.
Who wanted the baby oil to be heated?
Sean.
You mentioned that the baby oil was used because you had to be glistening?
Mm-hmm.
Who told you that you needed to be glistening?
Sean, it was his preference.
How frequently would baby oil be applied to be glistening?
like every 5 minutes. It was a lot.
What, if any, comments would Sean make about needing to apply baby oil?
He would, if he felt like you were too dry, he would let you know.
What would he say?
He would say, "You're too dry. You need to put more oil on," or "You need to be glistening. You need to be, you need to be shining." Yeah.
Who directed the application of baby oil during freak-offs?
I would say that was heavily on Sean. Occasionally, I would say that we needed more too because I just knew what to do.
Why did you know what to do?
It was a very choreographed experience.
Who choreographed the experience?
Sean.
During the freak-offs, who applied baby oil to you?
I applied it to myself, sometimes Sean, sometimes the escort,
Would you apply baby oil to anyone?
sometimes with the escort, sometimes to Sean.
How did you usually apply baby oil?
You just squirt it on out of the bottle.
Were there other ways of applying oil at a freak-off?
There was one time where I got to, I think it was at Le Mirage in Beverly Hills, and there was a pool, like a blow-up pool, and it was filled with lube and oil, so that was a different way.
When there was a blow-up pool that was filled with lube and oil, what did you do with the pool?
I don't know what happened with the pool, honestly.
I'm sorry, strike that. When there was a pool and oil, did you get into the pool?
I did, with my outfit, my shoes. It was quite dangerous.
Who, if anyone, asked you to get into the pool?
Sean, it was his idea.
Did you want to get into a pool of baby oil?
No, especially not in a hotel room like that. It was such a mess. It was like, what are we doing? Yeah.
Why did you get into the pool with baby oil?
At that point, I couldn't say no. It would have been all bad. When you say all bad, what do you mean?
Objection calls for speculation.
Your Honor, the witness just used...
I think just the verbiage is a little vague. I think you can ask a more focused question and you'll get a response.
Sure. You testified that if you did not get into the pool with baby oil, that it would be bad?
Yeah.
What concerns did you have about not getting into the pool with baby oil?
That, amongst other things, just his temper. If that was something that he wanted, Sean wanted to happen, that's what was going to happen. There wasn't another way around it.
Approximately how many bottles of baby oil would be used in a typical freak-off?
A lot. I would say definitely somewhere close to 10.
What size were those bottles?
The larger size bottles.
Were there freak-offs where you ran out of baby oil?
Objection, Your Honor, at this point is getting a little cumulative.
Let's see if we can wrap this up and move on.
You mentioned Astroglide. How was that used at the freak-off?
Same objection, irrelevant.
Your Honor, it's a supply.
Sidebar. Miss Johnson, maybe you could help us with where we're going right now. I think the objection is grounded in lack of relevance and also the cumulative nature of the questioning. Am I right about that?
That's right.
Maybe if you can give us some guidance as to where we're going next, that will be helpful.
Yes, Your Honor. We are going to go through the various supplies that were used because those are supplies that were demanded by the defendant, that were at every freak-off, that were consistent, which showed a pattern, which showed how he controlled the events that happened at these freak-offs. I will not ask any more oil questions. I have one more question on lubricant, but I'm going to march through the different supplies that were present.
That's fine. I understood the objection to be mainly on the cumulative nature of this. I think we had about 20 questions on baby oil issues, and I think we can condense that a little bit, and you'll avoid the objection. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Mr. Agnifilo?
I was going to say slippery slope, but I'm not going to say it.
Miss Johnson, you may proceed.
When we were just talking about Astroglide, how was the Astroglide used at freak-offs?
As a lubricant.
With respect to those two supplies, baby oil or Astroglide, were there times when you ran out of them?
Yes.
What would happen when you ran out?
When we would run out, we would have to either call somebody, staff to bring it, or ask the bell desk and give them a tip.
When you say staff, whose staff are you talking about?
Sean's staff.
Which members of Sean's staff would resupply the hotel rooms?
Assistants, usually.
Who would call the staff members?
Sean would advise me, or he would call himself.
And you also mentioned calling the bell desk. Who would call the bell desk?
Again, either me or him.
If you called, at whose direction would you be calling?
Sean's.
Initially, what kind of lighting was used for freak-offs?
Initially, it was candlelit, so various candles.
Who decided what kind of lighting would be used?
Sean.
What type of candles were used?
At a time, just really strong smelling candles, like Glade or Diptyque. Any just really strong smelling.
Who would typically bring the candles to the freak-offs?
It was all part of the setup, so whether it was an assistant or me or him.
Approximately how many candles were used?
Approximately 6 to 10.
How were the candles placed in the room?
They were placed so that Sean could see me and the escort in the candlelight.
Who requested the candle setup?
Sean.
Besides lighting, were there any other uses of candle wax at freak-offs?
A couple of times where it was poured on the body, but it wasn't common.
When you say poured on the body, whose body was it poured on?
My own or Sean's.
And whose decision was it to pour wax on either your body or Sean's body?
Sean's.
Did the lighting that was used in freak-offs change over time?
Yes. There were lights after a certain point, like the lights that we would use in a studio.
Can you describe what the light you would use in the studio is?
There were multicolored lights that changed with the music, kind of like a club light.
What colors are those lights?
Red, green, blue, purple.
Who made the decision to change the lighting?
Sean would have assistants bring the lights, so I guess him.
Ms. Gavin, can you pull up for identification Government Exhibit 3Q118 for the parties and the court only? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize who's in this photograph?
Yes.
At what type of location is this photograph taken?
To me, it looks like a hotel. It looks like the London Hotel in New York.
Who took this photograph?
I believe I did.
Is this a true and accurate photograph of Sean?
Yes. The government offers Government Exhibit 3Q118.
No objection.
It will be admitted.
Ms. Gavin, can you please publish Government Exhibit 3Q118 to the jury? Ms. Ventura, directing your attention to Sean's hand, what is he holding?
He's holding cash.
How do you describe the color of the room?
It's red from the studio light.
Is the studio lighting you described earlier responsible for the red color?
Yeah.
You can take that down, Ms. Gavin. What temperature were the rooms where the freak-offs were held?
They were usually pretty warm.
Who set the temperature?
Sean.
And you described that the candles were strong. How did the rooms smell during freak-offs?
I mean, if it were a Glade candle and a bunch of them, Angel Whispers, if anybody knows what that smells like, just on 10, it was super pungent and strong mixed with oil and just all of the other scents.
What other scents were there?
I mean, it was warm, so body odor, you know?
After a freak-off, can you describe the condition of the room where the freak-off was held?
The room was usually pretty bad off. There was oil all over the walls, the door handles, the bed, the sheets. We often would get to the room. I would need to call and ask for extra linens and towels and stuff like that to try to mitigate these problems. But oil, candle wax all over the place.
You mentioned you would call for extra linens. When would you do that?
Prior to starting.
Why would you call for extra linens?
To cover up the furniture that was there, to try to protect it.
You described wax and oil damage. What, if anything else, was soiling the linens?
Sometimes blood, urine.
So starting with blood, how would blood get on the linens at freak-offs?
I was expected to have freak-offs on my period.
Who expected you to do freak-offs on your period?
Sean.
Did you want to do freak-offs on your period?
No, I don't think anybody really wants to do that.
Before leaving the hotel, what, if anything, did you do to clean up the linens you described?
I mean, there really wasn't too much you could do but give a good tip and hope they would help out. I would just try to clean up what I could. Usually like an assistant or staff or somebody would come, I believe, after.
Are you aware if hotels charged for damage to the rooms?
I am.
How do you know that?
Through conversations with the staff that got a call from the hotel. I remember specifically like a number that was crazy. It was having to redecorate the room. It was a really high number to fix it.
Are you aware which hotel charged that really high number?
That was the Intercontinental in New York.
Do you remember the person that I referred to as the first escort?
Yeah.
Were there other escorts that you used besides the first escort?
Yes.
And after the first escort, who typically found escorts for freak-offs?
I was put on the task to find escorts.
And who, if anyone, put you on that task?
Sean did.
What, if any, requirements, physical or otherwise, did Sean have for escorts?
At first, it was very specific that he wanted a black male with a large penis, but eventually it just kind of became whatever's available.
Where did you find escorts to hire?
When it became really consistent, we had found an escort service called Cowboys for Angels, and they have escorts in like all the major cities in the US.
Before using Cowboys for Angels, how did you find escorts?
Initially Craigslist or Backpage or whatever.
What is Craigslist?
Craigslist is the website where you can put up ads and sell your bed and other things. It's just where you can place ads.
Besides placing ads, can you also respond to ads?
You can also respond to ads.
Did you post any ads to Craigslist?
No,
Did you respond to ads?
I did.
At whose direction did you respond to ads?
At Sean's direction. He'd tell me what to look for.
Your Honor, I'm not sure when the court was planning on taking a break this afternoon.
I was planning on doing it at 3 o'clock. But if this is a good place, we can take it now.
I think it would be a good place.
Thank you, members of the jury. As always, do not talk to each other about the case, and we'll have some further instructions at the end of the day. We'll be back at 3 p.m. All rise.
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay gifted.